Welcome to Learner's Planet, my dear children. Children, this is session 3 about adaptations, how animals survive. Children, in the previous session, we studied about different types of animals. And in this session, we are going to study about where animals live. And we are also going to study about the different types of animals like aquatic animals, aerial animals, and we will also see the adaptations for protection. So children, let's start with this session. So now we will first study about the animals and the animals where they live. So children, where animals live? Yes, animals are found almost everywhere. For example, animals are found in the plains, plains, plains. Animals are also found on trees, in air, in the deserts, on the mountains, and also in the water. So children, have you got it? Animals are found almost everywhere, in the plains, on trees, in air, in the deserts, on the mountains, and also in the water. So, based on where animals spend a large part of their time, animals are divided into 5 groups, right? So, they can be grouped into terrestrial animals, aquatic animals, amphibians, arboreal animals, and aerial animals. So children, these groups of animals are divided on the basis of the large part of their time spent, right? So let's study about each of them in detail. So first of all, we will study about the first group, that is terrestrial animals. So children, what do you mean by terrestrial animals? Yes, animals that live on land are called terrestrial animals, and these animals have features which are suitable for life on land, right? So always remember that the animals that live on land are called as terrestrial animals. What are they called as? Terrestrial animals. So children, we can also say that they have legs which help them to walk on land, and most of them have lungs as their breathing organ. So children, these kind of animals means terrestrial animals have lungs through which they breathe. So they breathe in oxygen through lungs, and they have legs which help them to walk on land. Okay children? So have you got it? Alright. So children, on the basis of this, we can also say that the conditions on the land also varies, right? For example, it is quite cold in the mountains and in the polar regions, as you can see here in this picture, right? This is a picture of the mountains. So, here in the mountains and in the polar regions, it is quite cold. While in the deserts, the climate is very hot. So, the conditions on the land also varies, right? It is different because it is cold in the mountain, in the polar region, and in the desert it is very hot. So, we can say that animals that live in very cold places have thick fur on their body which protects them from the cold. For example, yak and polar bear. they live in the mountains and in the polar regions. So children, always remember that such animals like yak and polar bear live in the mountains and in the polar regions, and they have thick fur, F-U-R, fur on their body, which protects them from the cold, right? And same way you can see that camels are found in deserts. So you can see that deserts are having very hot climate, and in the polar regions there is quite cold atmosphere, right? So yak and polar bear are living in the mountains and the polar regions, and camels are found in the deserts, right? So children, we can also see some more animals, like some animals are adapted to live in the freezing conditions. For example, penguin, walrus and seal, right? So these are some animals that are adapted to live in freezing conditions. So some animals live in the cold regions or the cold conditions. Some animals live in very hot conditions like in deserts, and some animals are adapted to live in the freezing conditions, right? For example, you can see here penguin, walrus and seal. So this is the picture of a walrus, and these are small little penguins. So children, we can say that they have a thick layer of fat. Who has a thick layer of fat? The animals that are adapted to live in the freezing conditions have a thick layer of fat called as blubber under their skin to keep the body warm. As we saw that there are some animals that live in the mountains and polar regions, and they have thick fur on their body which protects them from cold, right? But the animals that live in the freezing conditions have a thick layer of fat. They do not have a layer of fur. They do not have fur. They have thick layer of fat, which is called as blubber. B-L-U-B-B-E-R, blubber, and this blubber is present under their skin to keep the body warm, right? So always remember this, children. There are some animals that live in deserts also. For example, camels, right? So the animals living in the deserts have very little hair on their body. As you can see here, right? This is a picture of iguana, and this animal lives in the desert. So such animals have very little hair on their body, right? Children, there are also some animals that have different adaptations, right? So there are some animals that become inactive in very cold winter months. Since the food is also scarce, means very less. So this winter inactivity or sleep is called hibernation. Children, always remember that animals like deer, frog and snake become inactive in very cold winter months. Why? Because the food is very less or scarce. So this winter inactivity or this winter sleep is called hibernation, right? Children, we saw that animals living in deserts also have very little hair on their body, right? Why? Because there is a scarcity of water in the desert. There is very less water available in the desert, and these animals have certain adaptations that prevent water loss from their bodies. So we can say that they have very little hair on their body, and the same way these are some animals that become inactive in very cold winter months because food is very less. So this is called hibernation state, right? Children, there are also some other animals in the deserts that settle down to a very long sleep in the hot summer months to save water because there is very less or no water available in the deserts, right? So depending upon the amount of water available or depending upon the place where they live in, that is deserts, some animals settle down to a long sleep in the very hot summer months, and this summer sleep is called estivation. What it is called as? It is called as estivation. So children, always remember that the winter inactivity or winter sleep is called hibernation and the summer sleep is called estivation. Thus, we can say that animals have adapted to live in different types of conditions, right? We saw many examples for this, that some animals live in mountain and polar regions and they have thick fur on their body. Some animals live in deserts in very hot condition. Some animals live in the freezing condition and they have a thick layer of fat called as blubber. Then some animals live in the deserts, and this because of the scarcity of water or no water is available, they settle down to a long sleep which is called estivation, and some animals become inactive in the cold months, right? So this winter sleep is called hibernation, right? So I hope that you are clear with this. So we are clear with the terrestrial animals. Now we will study about aquatic animals. So children, what are actually aquatic animals? Yes, animals that live in water are called aquatic animals. We saw that the animals that live on land are called terrestrial animals, but animals that live in water are called aquatic animals. So children, let's study something more about aquatic animals. Children, most aquatic animals breathe through gills, as we saw before, right? So there are some or the most of the aquatic animals that breathe through gills, except whales and dolphins. Why? Because whales and dolphins breathe through lungs. They do not have gills like other aquatic animals. So dolphins and whales are such aquatic animals which breathe through lungs, right? And rest of the aquatic animals breathe through gills. Children, you must also be knowing that most of the aquatic animals have fins or they have paddles that help them to swim, right? So children, always remember that most aquatic animals have fins or paddles that help them to swim in the water. That is why they are able to swim for so long time or for the whole time in the water, right? So we will now see some example. For example, we can see here that this is an octopus, then turtle, then crab. So there are actually many aquatic animals, but apart from all the fishes, octopus, turtle, crab are also called as aquatic animals because they also live in water, right? So always remember that turtle, octopus and crab are also aquatic animals, and all other fishes are also aquatic animals. So children, I hope you are clear with this category, that is aquatic animals. Now we will study about amphibians. Children, animals like frogs and toads are called amphibians, right? Children, you already know that frog is an amphibian, as we saw, right? So what are actually amphibians? Why are they called amphibians? Right, they have certain features that help them to live both on land and in water. As we studied before, yes, amphibians are those animals that live both on land and in water. So they have certain interesting features. Let's see. Children, the back legs of the frogs and the toads are stronger than their front legs. Why their front legs are not so stronger than their back legs? Why their back legs are stronger than their front legs? Yes, there is a reason. Yes, the back legs of frogs and toads are stronger than their front legs to help them jump, which is how they move on land. As you can see here, that the frog jumps and moves ahead. So they are able to move on land because of their jumping, and their back legs of frogs or toads are stronger than their front legs, right? And we can also say that they have webbed feet that help them to swim in water. So they are able to move on land because of their back legs, stronger back legs, and they have webbed feet also that helps them to swim in water. So these are called amphibians. So always remember, frog and toad are amphibians, right? Because they are able to live on land as well as in water.